Hello guys, welcome back to Super Guy Boy Show, and today I am doing the video that I bet most of the subscribers that I've been having have been waiting for. My thoughts on Jojolion. But I'm not going to focus my thoughts on Jojolion as a whole, as an entire part, since I feel like that'll be at least an over 20-minute video, and I don't want to really do that. But instead, what I want to do in this video is focus on the ending of Jojolion, because Jojolion has always been such a strange part of me since like I started doing JoJo related content, because that was the only part of JoJo's I didn't read up to that point. And I always had comments here or there like, hey, why don't you read Jojolion? And I always told them, well, I haven't caught up to it and I haven't finished it. But now, since I just read it and finished it last week, and I had this whole week to just relay my griefs and thoughts of Jojolion, I decided to just do a video on my thoughts on the ending of Jojolion, because what I want to do is relay most of my issues and thoughts of the ending of Jojolion, because I have a lot to say about the ending. And feel free to comment down below what is y'all's thoughts on Jojolion as a whole, because I think Jojolion is certainly one of the most strangest and out there parts that Araki has definitely done in the entire franchise as a whole. Now, to be a bit more clear, everything that happens after chapter 100 is what I'm declaring the last end of Jojolion. So basically, chapter 101 to chapter 110 is my main discussion throughout the video. And to be a bit more clear and to give y'all more context, I thought that up to this point, Jojolion was a good part. There was definitely great arcs, but for the most part, I thought that it was fine. It was good. But I would be lying if I didn't say that Wonder View was my main attraction to what, in my opinion, made Jojolion so great. And I felt like Wonder View was just the most consistent in terms of quality throughout it up to this point compared to most other arcs in Jojolion. And that's why I would have probably said that up to this point, around chapter 100, I would have probably declared Wonder View in my top 20 arcs of JoJo's. I thought it was that great. But then the last 10 chapters, I feel like, was where it went totally just downhill for not only the arc, but the entirety of Jojolion. First off, chapter 101 was where they killed off Mamazuku in such an unsatisfying way. But not only that, it was the introduction of Gobion. Now, I'm going to just say, I do not like Gobion. In concept, I think it really is cool. You know, the idea to counter Wonder View's ability by a bubble that technically doesn't exist, I think works in terms of concept. It's a great counter to it, and I think it really would have worked very well as Josuke in terms of a character, but it's introduced way too late in the series. And not only that, and I know people are going to bring up how in chapter 70 something, Mamazuku did bring up that, but yet it wasn't talked about at all afterwards. And then it was just introduced when Mamazuku just brought it up, like, hey, did you know what? Did you know that like your bubbles are all suddenly like spinning? Like, you knew this since chapter 70 and you kept it to yourself like all this time just until the last end of the fight. I feel like what would have been much more better is if it was happening maybe in chapter 94 or something like that. Maybe one of the earlier chapters, the setup chapters of Wonder Review, to kind of set a forth like what Gobion could have been. Because I thought that Gobion just felt like such a worse version of GER. You know, you hear a lot of people saying how GER was an ass pull or a Deus Ex Machina. I can see what those people are talking about, and I will admit it to myself that, yeah, it is kind of strange that like GER is just an overly powerful stand that's just there to stop King Crimson's overly powerful ability. But in my opinion, Golden Wind just did it so much more better. First off, the last end of Golden Wind is literally who gets the Requiem arrow. It was a hunt of who gets it. The build-up was done way more better. I feel like the introduction of Requiem arrows and the reintroduction of Polnareff was done way more better. And the build-up to GER and when Giorno finally got it was so satisfying to me, at least. And I thought that when Josuke got Go Beyond, I thought it was just very unsatisfying because it didn't really have that same build-up or momentum that GER just had. And I just didn't like the way it was done. And to me, it just felt like a way of Araki just writing himself out of a very powerful situation that he put Josuke in. And I just didn't like the way it was done, just at all. And that's not even the last of my complaints. Kei Nijimura's reintroduction. She comes back, and in my opinion, it's done in one of the best chapters. 103 is a fantastic chapter. I love the little mini battle that they have. You know, when Born This Way freezes up the bubbles and lands the first attack on Toru, I thought was well done. But then the next chapter, she's killed off in such an unsatisfying way. Like, she does one move, then the next chapter, 10 pages later, she just is dead. Like, she just dies. And I felt like it was just such a unsatisfying way to kill off a character who had so much potential to be a way more better character than what she was. She was just there for a plot point, then gone for like almost the entire whole part, and then she's just reintroduced, and then she just dies like 15 pages later after just doing one move with her stand, which, by the way, I thought would have been cool to at least get at least a chapter of Born This Way doing way more stuff, but it just does one thing and then she dies, and then Josuke's just back on the pot, like, oh, Yasuo, what's going on right now? And then it's like he doesn't even give a shit that Kei Nijimura literally sacrificed herself. Remember in Golden Wind when a character died? When a character died in Golden Wind, it felt like an event that happened. When Abakio died, everyone reacted. When Narancia died, everyone reacted. When Bruno died, it felt like a legendary moment, and it felt so empowering for Giorno and all of that. And then even in part 6, the way death was used was well done. In part 7 especially, the Johnny's reaction to Gyro's death is one of the best like scenes in Steel Ball Run. But I felt like the way death was handled in Jojolion is handled really badly in here. And this is just one of those moments where I feel like I would have just been better off if Araki just forgot Kei Nijimura, because bringing back Kei Nijimura just to kill her off in such an unsatisfying way just didn't sit well with me. It may have done for one of the best chapters of the Wonder Review arc, but I felt like that chapter 104 was just really the point where I was just done with Jojolion. But then chapter 106 and 7 happened, and that's where I felt like the quality for once got back a bit. Chapter 107 especially, Kato's reintroduction I felt like was very unsatisfying for many reasons. For one, I feel like when Kato was introduced around chapter 56 or so, I felt like that when Kato was introduced, she felt like a force to be reckoned with. Now, of course, I didn't see her as like main villain material or anything, but I love her presence in that chapter. I love what she stated, like the whole idea that she wanted to take over the house and all of that. And I love her relationship with Jobin and all of that. You know, chapter 60 is one of the best chapters in Jojolion. I thought that she would have been a very great character to explore, but of course, we were too focused on a bunch of other arcs and a couple mid ones at that. But then when she's reintroduced, even though I was very disappointed the way Araki handled her character, just basically writing her off and just there just for like Jobin's backstory or whatever, but I felt like when Araki reintroduced her, I was kind of satisfied. I love her monologue. I love the flashback with her and Jobin in chapter 107. It was great to see Jobin once again after he died very horribly. I thought that it was great. I thought it was really well done. And I felt like chapter 107, the reason why I really love that chapter is because Toru was becoming a great villain. In my opinion, the whole rock on top of the mountain or whatever is easily his best moment, and it's done very well. I love the way it is done. It says so much about Toru. I love how he just basically, he's at his final moments and he knows he's fucked, so he's basically just trying to get Kato to attack him so Wonder Review could work. And I love how even Wonder Review's just in the background like, come on, is Kato gonna attack him so I can do some type of calamity? I love the way it was done. In my opinion, chapter 107 is easily in my top 5. I love that chapter. And even chapter 8 to a certain extent, I kind of liked it. It was done, you know, it was basically the ending of Wonder Review as the entire arc, you know. It ended off basically killing off Toru, you know, Josuke blowing up Wonder Review as a stan, and unfortunately Kato dying, which is of course another trend that Araki just did where a character just comes back to do one move or so and then just died. But I feel like there it was done really well, and I actually liked the way how her character died in such a tragic, but in my opinion, at least there, somewhat satisfyingly. I was fine right there. When I first time read it, I didn't like the way she died, but afterwards, giving it some thoughts, her monologue and the backstory with her and Jobin, I thought it was a kind of satisfying way for her to go. But then Radio Gaga happens. Now, I'm gonna be honest, I didn't like Radio Gaga as much. Now, do I hate it? No. I think it's a mediocre at best arc, and maybe it's another high voltage situation where a completely different arc happens around the last end of a part, and maybe with time I'll start to appreciate Radio Gaga for what it is. But for right now, as I stand, I didn't like these last two chapters of Jojolion. I felt like that Araki was just wasting time on a completely different storyline that I feel like he could have just done around part 9. But I really just gotta ask one question that for anyone to answer in the comments. What was the point of the Radio Gaga arc? Because I didn't really get why Araki spent so much time in the last two chapters on Lucy Steele and the alternative version of Joseph that he could have just done a random one shot after part 8. I don't get why he spent so much time on these two characters. Now, of course, I love Lucy Steele and I love how she came back, but and of course, I kind of like the idea, fighting a evil guardrail. Like that idea alone, I think it could have been done a little bit more better, but doing it around the ending of a part, what he could have just done it maybe in the middle section of Jojolion, maybe before the Wonder Review arc, or maybe during the whole Lokaka bullshit. But no, he just does it around the last end, and I didn't really like it. Of course, I like the atmosphere of it, the idea of a guardrail. It's something I feel like Thus Spoke Rohan Kishibe would have done, but instead it's Lucy Steele and Joseph, which I have a problem with. Why is this an alternative version of Joseph? He doesn't stand against Joseph, of course, but it's not like Yoshikage Kira, where at least he's a good character enough to at least like hold himself up. But no, Joseph, I feel like he could have just done a different JoJo character. Call him George Joestar the second or whatever, not Joseph. What's the point of even calling him a Joseph, in the first place, if he's not going to hold himself up as well? He's just a random character who comes in, and it just felt like such a Marvel moment, the way he just showed off Hermit Purple. I just didn't like this arc as much. It just takes too much time that I feel like it could just been way more better just ending off Jojolion. Because you know what happens in the last chapter? We spent at least under 20 pages of the remainder of Radio Gaga, and then the last end is basically like, first off, Holly doesn't get saved, not like his goals doesn't get reached, and then we have Joseph basically being like, Josuke being like, well, I know who I am now. I was born from the ground and all that, which was a cute moment. Joseph Fumi's mother was a cute moment as well, but I did not like the fact that Holly is just basically still in the coma, and then Josuke's like, oh yeah, there's like a couple, islands that have the Rokaka fruit. I might get them, might not, who knows. I just didn't like it. It felt like this whole ending, this whole last chapter didn't feel like an ending. It just felt like the part just stopped right in the middle, and I just didn't like it. The ending just doesn't feel earned, and I didn't like the fact that at the last part of it, we get, Josuke picking out a cake, and I didn't like the fact that, everyone's like, why don't you pick the cake, Josuke? And I just didn't like it. It felt like an artificial ending, something like the ending of Pose. It just didn't feel earned at all. Like first off, Josuke doesn't even get to accomplish most of his dreams at all. I mean, it was cool to see him finally, being fine for what he is, someone who doesn't have any memories, and being, finally being in a family for once. I kind of like that as an idea, but just ending it off right there felt very unsatisfying, and I just didn't like the ending at all. And then not only that, the flash forward. Can we get on that for a moment? The flash forward is easily one of Aragi's worst writing decisions. The flash forward ended up being just nothing but a, aha, you thought it was this, but in actuality, it was really nothing at all. It was just a misinterpretation, even though in the chapter, the fucking narrator literally tells you that Tsurugi might change his stand, and that doesn't fucking happen. So did the narrator just lie to us? Like, who are we supposed to trust? We're not even supposed to trust the fucking narrator? Like, I felt like the whole, like, Rokagaka time limit shit was just done as a contrived way for Rocky to put way more intensity, even though Wonder Review had enough intensity enough to like hold it up. But I just felt like the whole time limit, the flash forward, it just completely really takes it down a peg for me. For me, Jojolion is easily one of my least favorite endings of any JoJo part. It doesn't feel satisfying, and it just feels so empty and very artificial in a way. And I don't know, maybe with part 9 as it goes on, maybe it will expand more ideas on Jojolion, but as far as I know, I'm not really digging this part as much as the other one. Hopefully y'all subscribe, hopefully y'all like the video, and hopefully y'all have a great day. And yeah, see ya.